Tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi nui kuia koutou. Kia ora, Karen, for the introduction. And it's sort of, I'm sitting thinking, have I got much of my presentation to do? But it's awesome. So my pleasure to be here today, and it was I felt it's a privilege to be invited to the space to kōrero and share this kōrero with you. And I was just saying to my mate here, my normal way of practice, we'll do my mihi, and then I'll put it out to the room to introduce yourself, but by the time we finish, probably my time slot will be out. So, ko ai so I'll just add a little bit to kōrero from Karen. So, ko pūtarangi te maunga, ko matamako te awa. Ko Ngati Ruawaipu, Ngati Porou tūturu oku iwi, ko Whānau a tāpuhi te hapu, ko Penia hakoia uritarangi te rangatira, ko Tania Henderson ahau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. So, Māori-led solutions to address alcohol harm. Now, when this question was posed to me, I had a wee little giggle to myself. So I'm just going to read here because I'm shocking. I wrote notes thing. So it's about laying the foundations. So we are now within this understanding that we're looking at our tupuna ways to address something that we inherited through the colonisation process. So we know that before the colonisation started, that in New Zealand, if Māori, our choice of drink was inuwai, was water. Alcohol was not part of our vocabulary. We didn't have the means of climate. I'm not telling you anything new, that to brew alcohol within our country. Our survival as people was mahi tahi. We worked together. We had our own set of rules. We had our own tikanga and our kawa. Tikanga, the processes, rules that we follow and guide us. Kawa is changeable and how we adapt through to that. So as a people, our tupuna knew that in order to survive, there was a process that we had to mahi tahi work together. We each had a role, whether it was in kai, whether it was in hunting, whether it was in fishing, whether it was in rongoa, a tohunga. So everyone had a place. It was a time when our tamariki were observed. So example, I'm planting some kumara, and the lovely Kristen here is walking behind me pulling him out. She would not get a growling. There'll be someone out here observing what's happening here, and she'll be taken under their wing, and she'll learn everything to do with the harvesting, the growing, the cycles of the moon. When I look at that to where we are now in the world of FASD, what we know working with our tamariki is that we need to look at what their strengths are, look at what their uniqueness is, and embrace that and help them grow in that. Because we're in a society that is all our systems are chronologically based, yeah? So age 3 we need to go to ECE, age 5 we need to start all our systems chronological. But when we're thinking about the impacts of alcohol, i.e. with FASD, we need to change that and flip it up to be a developmental model. Our systems across our sectors are not set for that yet. Hereby there's a struggle happening out there. But anyway, moving forward. With the introduction of alcohol, and I can just relate from my own story with my own koro. So when I think of my koro, Penia Hakoia Uterangi, he was my great-great-grandfather. Alcohol was not part of his vocabulary. His was on whakapapa. He retained our whenua through tūranga waiwai. He stood in his place, and he went against the crown, and he went against Ngāti Porou, and he became a rebel, a gentle rebel. My great-grandfather, Mātini Koia, alcohol was not part of his vocabulary. Whereas my koro rua, alcohol was part of his vocabulary. And we see that the impact of that down the line when they talk about the harms of alcohol and how it impacted holding on to some of the whenua that our great-great-grandfather retained for us. Okay. So when I'm thinking about the space that we're working in here, this comes to mind, and I think that's what we need to remind us. This whakatauki is e hara takitoa e te tō takitahi, engari he tō takitini. Success is not the work of an individual, but the work of many. So collectivism is a big part of how we're going to move forward in supporting our whānau and our communities. I was at that protest, by the way. You'll recognise those flags. So, like the mahi that I did, which I love being part of the project for the development of the diagnostic guidelines, It is about whakakotahitanga. The only way we're going to address this issue, we feel, is unity and working together. So a collective solution to addressing the issue of alcohol harm within our communities. I'll put my papers over here, so this to me is about, and I can relate to the kōrero from when I was doing my mahi back home in the far north, and it was really about getting our whānau and our communities coming together in a wānanga, in a hui, and let's start talking about this real issue that's happening. Now I've raised and worked in a community that is lower socio, right? I was raised at a time where alcohol was a big part of my dad's life, but they worked and actually come together. From that time to when I was working back in the far north, back from 2012, 2019, and I don't know if many of you have been to our little towns or are from a little town, but you can go and sit out on the street an hour, half an hour before the benefit drops into the bank accounts, and there'll be a queue down the street there for the ATM machines. Now if you take that observation and you go and sit down Pack and Save or the local dairy or a garage, you can bet bottom dollar what's going in the cart first. So what happens in our communities, and the happy communities, thank you very much, the happy communities, is if your benefit drops in on a Tuesday, if you're on a benefit, it's your turn to buy the alcohol. If yours drops in on a Wednesday, your turn to buy the alcohol. And this is the progress what's happening in weeks. So if you're talking about harm in our communities, this is what's happening. By Sunday, I've only got $5, so let's combine our money and we'll buy a box. This is the reality of the mahi that we're doing at this level down here, what we need to be reminded of our communities. But the good thing about our communities that I love is that, I'll move on because I'm flustered out, okay. So things in our country is the two different perspectives. There's a clash of cultural perspectives, and from a Māori and Indigenous perspective, there's collectivism, value and where we are. On my taha Scottish English side, it's the individual, not Scottish, my English side. Scottish is collectivism as well, but on my English side, individualism. So I put this up here, and this is from Hofstede, 1980. Individualism and collectivism respectively refer to integration of individuals into groups. So we know there's a big, big difference, right? Most of us are working, well not most of us, some of us are working in the space of individualism. How can we work with that one person? But we can't just work with me. You need to work with my whole whānau. Right? If you want me to make a change, we need to engage our whānau. We need to be looking at a therapeutic model, which is what I engaged, the koa model, is where you need to walk backwards. Like I'm a whānau therapist by trade, so intergenerational mahi is really key if we want to make change. Because if we want to take that out of the system, we've first got to understand why it's there and how it's impacted us. So shifting him out. Oh, this is my tonga. He sits on my shelf. So I'm moving to the next one. I'm going fast. I'm moving my button. You're right. So when we start, once we have identified the difference between collectivism and individual, what works for that whānau, we need to start putting it back together. Right? And this is the stage that I find that we can then start looking at how do we address alcohol harm. We need to kōrero with everyone that was in that room. Yeah. Whanangatahi. Whanangatanga mahi tahi koutou. You guys recognise this photo? Yeah. So this was up on the Cashmere Hills, back on looking into Christchurch at the time of the earthquake, 2011. Now why I've put this up here, because it reminds me. So 2010 earthquakes, there's a lot of support that come into our rohi, a lot of people giving koha to our communities. But what they were finding as a result of that that support was they weren't actually getting into our Māori communities. Goodwill, good organisations trying to mahi with our whānau who didn't want them to come over their doorstep. 2011, after this one here, the strategy changed with our government, and an emphasis went on to mahi tahi. This is the first time in my life I was really introduced into people getting out of their silos, and I'm talking across the government stuff here, out of their silos, across sectors, in the same room. Our Māori organisations were engaged to mahi with our whānau, because we'd knock on the door, we could see sewage coming down the corridor. Kei te pai, Nan? Oh, kei te pai. Carl, not kei te pai. You know, so it was just a difference in that concept of, you know, Māori working for or with Māori, you know, or whether it's Māori or other Indigenous cultures, creating their own system and support. 2 minutes. So that's what's there for me. It reminds me that we can, as communities, as a country, come together if we really want to. It was great. It was amazing mahi done there. So for me, I love this whakatauki. I was reminded of it the other day when I had really witty, so do I stay in this space or do I go? Someone read this whakatauki back out to me. Kia whakatomo muri te haere whakamua. I walk backwards into the future with my eyes fixed on my past. So I always look at that. I look back at my tupuna time. I look at how they were. I look at my parents who brought me up that same way. And then it gets me going. This is about my mokopuna, this is about your mokopuna, and what decisions we're making and we share is going to be the impact for them in the future. So, in closing, I'll read off my notes as easier. So in closing, Māori-led solutions to addressing harm, get connected, stay connected, become stronger. And with that, I think I'm going to bring it to a close, otherwise I'll carry on. But it's a simple whānau. When we're looking at Māori-led solutions for addressing alcohol harm, for me, it's always been about walking beside that person and understanding what their journey is. We might want them to make a change, but they might not be able to make a change depending on the environment. Using a whānau-centred approach, introduce yourself to and who you are, and make time to get to know them. And if you're going into our communities, make time to do whanaungatanga. I can't emphasise that enough. I've seen so many organisations and research projects come into the community, take, but they don't make that critical component of spending even if it's a half an hour, but a whole day. I made a project stop in their tracks, one whole day. You come into our communities, one day in whanaungatanga. It was amazing. It made the difference because I was part of the last time with the strategic plan. But that's my time up. Please answer questions. I've got lots more stuff in my head. So, kia ora koutou.
Tēnā rau koutou katoa. He mokopuna tēnei no te tai rāwhiti. Karen, tēnā koe mō tō mihi kia māua, kia mātou katoa. And Tania, what a brilliant presentation. I really enjoyed that, and it works so nicely into what I want to be talking about today. And so I've got this photo up because it was one that actually, if you know Shirley Ann Brown, the wonderful Shirley Ann Brown, for those of you who know her, where she took this photo in Waikiki. I think it was about 2010 or so. It was at a Healing Our Spirits a conference there, and I've always loved this photo of hers. But anyway, I'm mentioning Shirley Ann because she would do what Tania would do first of all, and just absolutely ground the kōrero in real lived experience and in this beautiful mahi that you do, Tania. So he tino mihi ki a koe mo tō koha aroha kia mata kia, to our people and everything too. So thank you so much for that. And then I'd come in and do the boring policy stuff half the time. So you bear with me because I have got some of that, but I've hopefully you won't. So a lot of words, not like these beautiful pictures that Tania had, but I just wanted to make to reiterate, I suppose, alcohol harm in this way, because what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides that I've got is actually more about any harm that has come from the system, from structural issues, and I think we need to actually really get down to that level now. So, alcohol is an introduced colonial substance, as Tania had mentioned. There was nothing in our history as Māori that has had real devastating effects on the lives of many of our Māori whānau and communities, and you're probably quite aware of that. And despite a lot of our tupuna and present day efforts to control the effects of alcohol, it continues to have a significant impact and to be treated just as an ordinary commodity. And I mean, Tania's alluded to some of these impacts as well, but we've all seen them within our communities. I was born and bred in Turanganui-a-Kiwa. I'm back home now and I see it, just down the road, everywhere I walk, the devastating effects of alcohol harm on our communities. And you know, today, as we know, Māori experience a disproportionate amount of alcohol-related harm, and this has been really persistent, intergenerational, and it is very destructive. So when we think about alcohol harm, it's not just about the health effects. It's about the impact that it has on our whānau. It's about the impact that it has on our whakapapa. So there is a whole lot of other, you know, when we talk about FASD, that is whakapapa. So it is very destructive, and there's many layers to it as well when you get down to it as to what it means when it impacts on Māori. And yet Māori continue to have very little influence on alcohol decisions in their communities. And the treaty analysis that Karen referred to showed that the regulatory framework, treaty analysis, treaty analysis, that's how it's just sort of, and that treaty analysis actually showed, you know, that the regulatory framework really supported calls for rebalancing power, greater community participation, and for the inclusion and strengthening of these evidence-based measures. And these are measures that have been there for a long time. You know, 10 years ago when the Law Commission was doing the reform back at that time, these evidence-based measures of increasing price, of reducing availability, of restricting promotion, marketing, they were being put forward at that point. The Law Commission recommended it. It was the only recommendations really that weren't taken into account, the actual ones that could make a real difference. And these reports, there have been reports since then that keep reiterating this, and yet no action. There has been a slight movement forward though, I must admit, with the 2023 reform, but still there was no mention of whether and how the treaty might be considered despite supportive submissions. And there was about 125 submissions that talked about the absence of the treaty or any tools to support Māori participation in this way. Problematic alcohol use is a symptom of the broader systemic structural factors, and we need to identify a real different way forward and take real insistent collective action toward it. And so what I want to just briefly talk about is Māori-led kaupapa tikanga Māori solutions, I believe anyway, have the greatest potential for breaking the intergenerational cycle of this alcohol-related harm among Māori. And so I've just been doing a bit of thinking, as I do, and I've got some early ideas on what these are very early ideas about what I'm thinking about are 3 pillars of a Māori strategic approach, because we've had this alcohol reduction harm approach for some time, which had supply, demand, I think it's problem limitation. So I sort of took that and thought, from a Māori point of view, does that still work? And of course there are some elements of that are useful. But I was thinking, well, first of all, you know, we need to really address these structural issues that perpetuate harm, because we don't do that. We're not dealing with the actual cause, we're just dealing with the symptoms. And alcohol harm, and any harm actually, is a symptom of, you know, certain structural issues. And I think we've heard some of that from Professor Sharon Friel this morning around ideas. I really like that, ideas, interests and institutions. And so one of the, I don't know if you've come across Patrick Wolf's kōrero about Anglo-settler colonisation, but one of the things he talks about is settler colonisation is a structure rather than an event. We seem to think that colonisation just happened. It's still happening. It's still happening because it's embedded in the structures, just as what the professor said this morning. And so a te tiriti aligned law and policy is what is really, really needed in this country. The second sort of pillar, which actually is the flip side of the third one I was thinking, is we need to actually break the intergenerational cycle of harm, because that harm has been coming through a lot of our generations. It's not just, hey, now. It's been there for a long time. And as we know, for anything, it takes just as long, if not longer, unless we have something really powerful in place that can break that. And so we're talking about intergenerational harm. And so one of the beautiful quotes that I've seen from Moana Jackson, of course, is in Katarina Mataira's Māori-led booklet, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, hopefully if I get time to. And he says, you know, the mamai and the trauma are signs of unwellness, and the colonising taking, always manifests itself, and not just the symptoms, and this is what the symptoms we're talking about, alcohol harm, this obesity and all this stuff that impacts on our people, but in the denigration of the ideas and the practices that Indigenous peoples once used to deal with them, and we've heard some of that from Tania this morning. And so we need to strengthen our connections to that stuff. So strengthening our connections to what matters. And I like this from Amata's scene, if you know his work, but he talks about expanding the capabilities of people to lead the lives that they have reason to value, but also again from Moana, the infinite yet very human wisdom of the tūpuna was that our people learn that insight and wellness both derive from the certainty of knowing who we are. And that's part of what was taken to some extent, and we have to regain back. So again, I come to the sort of early conclusion, well, tikanga kaupapa Māori paradigms, practices, solutions are very key to this. So I want to just, 2 minutes, oh gosh, okay, well, we're going to have 2 minutes on wairua. But I wanted to start talking about wairua. Now, this is why I've been doing quite a bit of research on this. Actually, I'm going to be submitting my doctorate at the end of next month, hopefully. But it is on wairua. And so what I'm going to be talking about very quickly in about a minute is what I found from some of the research that I've done in this area, but also from my lived experience. And what resonates and what's pono for me. So what I might say about this might be different to other people, but this is about what's pono to me. And so I wanted to start off, oh my goodness, it's just gone and all thinged in together, but sorry, I'll read it. Obviously not. But this is from Katarina Mataira again. And she talked about ko te hare me te koa I roto I ngā mahi katoa ngā tino tohu o te wairua ora. And that's, in the way you appear, the way you look, your energy, that tells you whether your wairua is up. And wairua, is often associated with spirit and spirituality, but those terms do not capture the true depth and meaning of wairua. And for me, and what I found through my research as well, it is the most fundamental dimension of well-being, yet it is the one we don't know, which is least understood in a lot of what we do. Understood from a Māori worldview, wairua has layers of meaning, and it is strongly intertwined with other taha wairua concepts. So this is talking about Māori tapu and mana, and so one of the things when I started off my doctorate is I thought, well, how can anything impact on wairua? Because wairua is it's all powerful. It's the only thing that could possibly impact on that is the choices we make. Because from my point of view and from what I've learned is that that will determine your choices, whether you evolve or devolve in terms of your the evolution of your wairua. But actually, when the wairua is housed in our body, it is very affected by other things. That's where your mauri comes in. And so as housed in the body, that's when the way in which we talk about whanaungatanga, you could feel I could feel it when Tania was speaking. You could feel a connection to that. And that is coming from that place. And how we treat each other is so important. So if we're not treating people humanely, which is happening a lot, and I've got plenty of research reports to show that as well, that has an impact on somebody's wairua in that. But it's a real pity because I'm not going to be able to go through these two great leaders, but I just want to touch on very quickly. Dr. Ihakara, or Kara Pukitapu, you may have known him. His program of tūtangata, which you will know as part of that movement was Kohanga Reo, the Kura Kaupapa Māori. The tūtangata was all the devolution that started to happen. That is his program. He was a driver behind that program. And anyway, a real fundamental feature, which I don't know whether many people know about it, of his program was wairua. And his thing was that if you could be more in touch with your own wairua, and then, as well as others, that could make a huge difference. He believed it could revolutionise the bureaucracy from within. That is how powerful it is. And there's others too. The other one I want to just quickly mention is Dame Katarina Mataira. And she is known for Te Aho Matua, who, with Kura Kaupapa Māori, that's the basis of the Te Aho Matua. and also te tuakiri o te tangata, which is the taha wairua model, that is also associated with that. Now, both of those models came from one of her tupuna. It was channeled in. And so that's beautiful. And also, I'd love to have talked about Māori-led, because Māori-led was actually, it was actually started from the Health Sponsorship Council as part of looking at what could be done from a Māori perspective to break, to deal with tobacco harm. And what she came up with was this beautiful thing. Well, actually, the source comes from wairua first, and everything else around it, the environment, the tinana, the whānau, are all part of actually nurturing, embracing, feeding that wairua. And so you get that right. Everything is right. But I apologise for going over time. Wa tēnei, nā rungi te wairua o tēnei wā, kei te mihi atu a, kia koutou katoa.